In the quiet of the night, when the world slows and shadows stretch long, the past whispers its darkest secrets. Welcome to Shadows of the Past, where we unravel true crime stories that linger like ghosts, stories of betrayal, greed, and lives shattered by choices made in the dark. Tonight, in Volume 41, we dive into 11 chilling cases, each a thread in the tapestry of human ambition gone wrong. From intricate Ponzi schemes to violent betrayals, these tales will pull you into a world where trust is a weapon and truth is a hard-won prize. Settle in, let the rain outside wash away the day, and allow these stories to unfold in the stillness. But be warned, the shadows of these crimes don't fade easily. They cling, they haunt, and they demand to be heard. So close your eyes if you dare, and let's step into the first story, a tale of ambition twisted into a web of deceit. In the heart of Los Angeles. Part 1, The Fall of Emily Wilson. The streets of Los Angeles in 2014 shimmered with promise, a city where dreams were born and broken in the same breath. Emily Wilson, a young woman with fire in her eyes, arrived here chasing something bigger than herself. She wasn't born into wealth or privilege. No. Emily clawed her way up from a small town, her ambition a burning coal that refused to cool. She was sharp, charismatic, and hungry. Qualities that could have made her a star in any boardroom. But somewhere along the way, her path veered into the shadows. This is the story of how Emily Wilson, once a dreamer, became the architect of a criminal empire, and how it all came crashing down. Emily's early days in LA were unremarkable. She worked odd jobs, waitressing, freelance graphic design, anything to keep the lights on. But she wasn't content with scraping by. She watched the city's elite glide through life, their wealth a glittering taunt, and she wanted a piece of it. Not just a piece. She wanted it all. It started small, a side hustle selling knockoff designer bags to tourists on Venice Beach. The cash came easy, and so did the realization people were willing to pay for illusions. That's when Emily's mind began to churn, plotting something far grander than fake purses. By 2012, Emily had reinvented herself. No longer the small-town girl, she was now a polished consultant. Her LinkedIn profile a masterpiece of fabricated credentials. She rented a sleek office downtown, complete with glass walls and modern art, and began pitching herself to small businesses. Her charm was her weapon. Disarming, persuasive, the kind of smile that made you trust her before you even knew why. She offered financial advice, promising to triple profits with exclusive investment opportunities. Most of her clients were mom-and-pop shops, desperate to grow, and Emily delivered just enough results to keep them hooked. But this was only the warm-up. The real game began when Emily stumbled into the world of credit card fraud. It wasn't planned, at least not at first. A shady acquaintance, a hacker named Marcus, showed her how easy it was to skim card numbers from online transactions. The dark web, he said, was a marketplace where stolen data flowed like currency. Emily was intrigued, not by the tech, but by the potential. She saw a way to scale her ambitions, to build something vast. With Marcus's help, she started small, testing the waters by funneling stolen funds through fake business accounts. The money rolled in, and so did her confidence. By 2013, Emily had assembled a crew, not friends, but tools. Marcus handled the tech, pulling card numbers from compromised databases. A woman named Tara, a former bank teller with a grudge against the system, set up shell companies to launder the cash. And then there was Alex, the smooth-talking frontman who could sell ice to a glacier. Together they built a machine, a network of fraudulent transactions disguised as legitimate investments. Emily's pitch was simple but brilliant. She offered clients a chance to invest in high-yield ventures, promising returns too good to be true. The money they gave her was funneled through her shell companies, mixed with stolen funds, and paid out just enough to keep the illusion alive. A classic Ponzi scheme, but with a digital twist. The operation grew fast. Too fast. By 2014, Emily's network spanned dozens of states, with hundreds of investors pouring in millions. She was living the life she'd always dreamed of. A penthouse in West Hollywood, designer clothes, private parties with LA's elite. She threw lavish galas, inviting her clients to mingle with influencers and minor celebrities, all to reinforce the myth of her success. To them, she was a financial genius, a woman who'd cracked the code to wealth. But behind the scenes, cracks were forming. Marcus was getting sloppy, leaving digital footprints the feds could trace. Tara was skimming cash on the side, growing resentful of Emily's iron grip, and Alex Alex was the real problem. Alex was Emily's mirror, ambitious and ruthless, but with a streak of envy she hadn't seen coming. He wanted more than his cut. He wanted the throne. As the operation swelled, so did his resentment. Emily was the face, the one clients adored while he played second fiddle. He started whispering to Tara, planting seeds of doubt, suggesting they could run the show without her. Tara, already bitter, listened. The betrayal was brewing, but Emily was too busy counting her money to notice she was untouchable, or so she thought. The FBI had been watching for months. A string of suspicious transactions flagged by banks had led them to Emily's shell companies. They didn't know her name yet, just a web of accounts moving millions with no clear source. Agent Sarah Klein, a veteran of financial crimes, was assigned to the case. She spent sleepless nights poring over data, connecting dots that led closer to Emily's empire. Klein wasn't just hunting a criminal, she was chasing a ghost. Someone who'd built a fortress of lies so intricate it seemed impenetrable. But every fortress has a weak point, and Klein found hers. Alex. Alex's ego was his undoing. He'd started flaunting his wealth. Sports cars, Rolexes, Instagram, posts from private jets. It was reckless, and it caught Klein's attention. She tracked him to a club in downtown LA where he was tossing cash like confetti. A wiretap on his phone revealed hushed conversations with Tara, fragments of a plan to cut Emily out. Klein saw her chance. She approached Alex with an offer. Turn informant or face decades in prison. Alex, cornered and spineless, chose survival. He spilled everything. The shell companies, the stolen cards, Emily's role as the mastermind. In exchange, he'd get a lighter sentence. The betrayal was complete. Emily sensed something was wrong. Clients were asking questions, payments were delayed, and Alex had gone quiet. She didn't know the feds were closing in, but she felt the walls tightening. She started moving money offshore, planning an escape to somewhere without extradition. Belize, maybe, or Panama. She was days away from vanishing when Klein's team struck. A pre-dawn raid on her penthouse caught her off guard. They found laptops, encrypted drives, and a ledger detailing every transaction. Emily didn't resist. She knew the game was over. Her empire, built on charm and deceit, crumbled in a single morning. The trial was a spectacle. Emily Wilson, once the darling of LA's business scene, sat stone-faced as prosecutors laid out her crimes. Wire fraud, money laundering, identity theft. The courtroom was packed with her victims, small business owners who'd lost everything, families whose savings were gone. Their testimonies were raw, filled with anger and heartbreak. Emily's defense argued she was a product of a cutthroat world, a woman forced to play dirty to survive. But the evidence was overwhelming. Alex testified against her, his voice dripping with self-preservation. Tara, arrested separately, corroborated his story. Marcus, the hacker, had fled the country, but his digital fingerprints were everywhere. In the end, Emily was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. The judge called her scheme a betrayal of trust on an unimaginable scale. Her victims would never recover their losses, their lives forever altered by her greed. As she was led away in handcuffs, Emily's face betrayed no emotion, just the cold calculation that had defined her. The woman who'd once dreamed of greatness was now a cautionary tale, her name synonymous with betrayal. But the story doesn't end there. In the years since, Emily's case has been studied by criminologists, a textbook example of how ambition can twist into something monstrous. Her shell companies were dismantled, but the dark web markets she exploited still thrive, waiting for the next Emily to take the stage. And somewhere, in the quiet of a prison cell, she sits, perhaps plotting her next move, or reflecting on the empire she lost. The shadows of her crimes stretch long, a reminder that in the pursuit of power, the line between dreamer and villain is razor thin. As the rain falls outside, let that thought linger. Emily Wilson's story is just the beginning. 10 more tales wait in the darkness, each one a descent into the choices that haunt us. Stay with us, if you dare, for the next chapter in Shadows of the Past. Part 2, The Redemption of Michael Carter. In the heart of Wichita, Kansas, in 2012, the air carried the weight of dreams unfulfilled and lives teetering on the edge. This was a city of hard workers, of families scraping by, where hope was a fragile thing easily crushed by circumstance. Michael Carter, a young man barely into his 20s, walked these streets with a hunger that burned deeper than most. Born into poverty, Michael knew struggle like an old friend, but he also knew something else, a desperate need to escape the life he'd been handed. This is the story of how that desperation led him to a bank vault, a botched robbery, and a long winding path toward redemption. Settle in, let the rain outside blur the world, and listen as we unravel the choices that defined Michael Carter's life. Michael grew up in a crumbling neighborhood on Wichita's east side, where the houses sagged under the weight of neglect, and the sound of sirens was a nightly lullaby. His mother worked double shifts at a diner, her hands calloused, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. His father was a ghost, gone before Michael could form a memory of him. Money was a constant worry, a specter that haunted every decision. Michael learned early that survival meant hustle, mowing lawns, delivering newspapers, anything to ease the burden on his mother. But even as a kid, he dreamed of more. He'd watch TV shows about wealthy families, their lives a glittering mirage, and vow to make it out, to give his mother a life where she didn't have to count pennies. By his teens, Michael's dreams had curdled into resentment. School was a dead end. He was smart but restless, uninterested in lessons that felt disconnected from his reality. He dropped out at 16, taking up odd jobs, construction, car washes, whatever paid, but the money was never enough and the world seemed rigged against him. That's when he fell in with the crowd that offered a different path. They were older, rougher men who spoke of quick cash and easy scores. One of them, a wiry ex-con named Danny, took Michael under his wing. Danny saw potential in the kid, sharp, loyal, and desperate. He introduced Michael to a world where the rules didn't apply, where banks and businesses were just obstacles to be outsmarted. Now, the plan came together in the spring of 2012. Danny had been casing a small bank on the outskirts of Wichita, a branch with lax security and a vault that held more cash than most. It wasn't a heist out of a movie, no high-tech gadgets or elaborate disguises, just a straightforward smash and grab. Danny recruited two others, a driver named Ray who'd done time for grand theft, and a lookout called TG, a jittery kid, barely older than Michael. Michael was the muscle, chosen for his size and his willingness to follow orders. The plan was simple. Walk in just before closing, brandish a couple of handguns, tie up the tellers, and empty the vault. They'd be in and out in 10 minutes, split in a haul of maybe $200,000, 0 cents. To Michael, it sounded like freedom. A ticket out of Wichita, a chance to start over. But Michael wasn't a criminal, not yet. The night before the robbery, he sat in his mother's cramped apartment, staring at the peeling wallpaper. Doubt gnawed at him. He'd never held a gun, never hurt anyone. What if someone resisted? What if they got caught? Danny's voice echoed in his head. You want to be a nobody forever? This is your shot, kid. Michael thought of his mother, her tired smile, the way she hid her pain. He thought of the life he could give her, a house, a car, a future. By morning, his doubts were buried, replaced by a steely resolve. He was in. The robbery went wrong from the start. It was a humid afternoon, the kind where the air clung to your skin. The bank was quiet, only two tellers and a manager inside. Michael and Danny burst through the door, ski masks pulled down, guns drawn. Danny barked orders, his voice sharp with adrenaline, while Michael waved his pistol, trying to look menacing. The tellers froze, hands trembling as they raised them. But the manager, a wiry man in his 50s named Paul, didn't flinch. He pressed a silent alarm under his desk, a move so subtle no one noticed. That single act changed everything. As Danny and Michael herded the staff to the vault, TJ was supposed to watch the entrance. But TJ was high, his nerves frayed, and he missed the patrol car pulling into the lot. Inside, the vault was a disappointment. Less cash than expected, maybe $50,000, 0 cents in stacks of 20s. Danny cursed, shoving bills into a duffel bag, while Michael's heart pounded. Something felt off. Then they heard it. Sirens, faint but growing louder. TJ bolted inside, screaming, "Cops!" Panic erupted. Danny grabbed the bag, shoving past Michael, who stood frozen, the gun heavy in his hand. Ray was already peeling out of the lot, leaving them behind. Danny and Michael sprinted out the back, vaulting a fence into an alley. The sirens were deafening now, closing in. Danny, faster and more experienced, ditched Michael without a word, vanishing into a maze of side streets. Michael ran blindly, his mask slipping, his breath ragged. He didn't see the patrol car until it was too late. Officers tackled him in a vacant lot. The duffel bag long gone with Danny. As the cuffs snapped around his wrist, Michael's world collapsed. He was 19, and his life was over. The arrest was just the beginning. Michael was charged with armed robbery, conspiracy, and possession of an unregistered firearm, crimes that carried a potential sentence of decades. In the holding cell, reality sank in. He'd failed. Not just the robbery, but his mother, himself, the dreams he'd clung to. The police interrogated him for hours, offering deals if he'd name his accomplices. Michael stayed silent, not out of loyalty, but fear. Danny was out there, and Michael had seen what happened to snitches. Besides, he had no proof. No way to pin the plan on anyone else. The others, Danny, Ray, TJ, had vanished, leaving Michael to face the consequences alone. The trial was swift and brutal. The prosecution painted Michael as a hardened criminal, a threat to society. The tellers testified, their voices shaking as they described the terror of that afternoon. Paul, the manager, stared Michael down, his eyes cold with judgment. Michael's public defender, overworked and underprepared, argued that he was a first-time offender, a kid caught up in a bad crowd. But the evidence was damning: security footage, fingerprints, the gun found in his possession. Michael's mother sat in the courtroom, her face etched with grief, unable to meet his eyes. When the guilty verdict came, it was no surprise. The judge sentenced him to 25 years, a number that felt like a lifetime. Prison was a crucible. Michael landed in a medium security facility outside Topeka, a concrete labyrinth of violence and despair. At first, he kept to himself, haunted by his mistakes. The other inmates sensed his weakness, and he learned quickly that survival meant toughness, or at least the appearance of it. He got into fights, took beatings, and gave a few back. But something else was stirring inside him, a flicker of the boy who'd once dreamed of better. He started reading books from the prison library, anything he could get his hands on. Biographies, philosophy, even poetry. Words became his escape, a way to rebuild the pieces of himself he'd lost. A year into his sentence, Michael met Chaplain Ellis, a grizzled former Marine who ran the prison's rehabilitation programs. Ellis saw something in Michael, a spark of remorse, a hunger for change. He invited Michael to join a restorative justice group where inmates met to confront their crimes and their impact. At first, Michael resisted, wary of opening old wounds. But Ellis was persistent, and Michael, desperate for purpose, gave in. The group was raw, unfiltered. Inmates shared stories of pain they'd caused, lives they'd ruined. Michael listened, then spoke. He talked about his mother, the robbery, the moment he realized he'd thrown it all away. The words poured out, heavy with guilt, and for the first time, he cried. That group changed him. Michael began to see his crime not as a single act, but a ripple, touching lives he'd never considered. The tellers, the manager, the community. He wrote letters to his victims, not expecting forgiveness, but needing to own his actions. None replied, but the act of writing grounded him. He enrolled in every program available: GED courses, vocational training, even a creative writing workshop. He discovered a talent for words, crafting essays about his past, his regrets, and the man he wanted to become. His teachers noticed, encouraging him to keep going. For the first time in years, Michael felt a purpose beyond survival. Outside, the world moved on. His mother visited when she could, her health fading under the weight of stress and poverty. Each visit was a reminder of why Michael kept pushing. He wanted to be more than a convict, more than the kid who'd failed her. He started mentoring younger inmates, sharing what he'd learned about accountability and choice. Some listened, others didn't. But Michael kept at it, driven by a belief that even in a place like this, change was possible. 6 years into his sentence, Michael's efforts caught the attention of a non-profit focused on prison reform. They reviewed his case, saw his transformation, and petitioned for a sentence reduction. It wasn't easy. The original judge was skeptical, and the victim's statement still carried weight. But Michael's record was impeccable. No infractions, glowing reports from staff, and a stack of certificates from completed programs. His writing, too, had gained notice, with one essay published in a local paper under a pseudonym. It was a raw account of his crime and his journey since, and it moved readers, some of whom wrote letters supporting his release. In 2018, after a grueling hearing, the judge agreed to reduce Michael's sentence to 12 years with eligibility for parole in 2. It wasn't freedom, but it was hope. Michael doubled down, earning a welding certification and starting a prison book club. He wrote more, his words a bridge to a world he'd once thought lost. When parole came in 2020, he walked out a different man. Not the angry kid who'd run into that bank, but someone who'd faced his demons and chosen to rebuild. Life outside wasn't easy. Wichita had changed, and so had Michael. He found work at a machine shop, his welding skills a lifeline. He moved in with his mother, helping with bills and chores, trying to make up for lost time. The guilt never left him, nor did the weight of his past. He tracked down Paul, the bank manager, and apologized in person. Paul didn't forgive him, but he listened, and that was enough. Michael kept writing, self-publishing a memoir that sold modestly but resonated with those who'd walked similar paths. He spoke at community centers, sharing his story with at-risk youth, hoping to steer them away from the choices he'd made. Today, Michael Carter is a quiet man living a life of purpose and penance. He's not rich, not famous, just a guy trying to do right in a world that doesn't always forgive. His mother passed in 2023, and her pride in his change was his greatest reward. The scars of 2012 remain on him, on his victims, on Wichita's memory, but so does his redemption, a fragile, hard-won thing that proves, even in the darkest moments, there's a chance to turn back. As the rain drums on, let Michael's story settle in your mind. It's a tale of failure, consequence, and the slow climb towards something better. But the shadows aren't done with us yet. 9 more stories wait, each one a glimpse into the choices that shape us and break us. Stay with Shadows of the Past, if you dare, for what comes next. Part 3, The Reckoning of Richard Holloway. In the quiet town of Bloomington, Indiana, in 2012, life moved at a gentle pace. The streets were lined with modest homes, the kind where neighbors waved and secrets stayed buried behind closed doors. But beneath this calm surface, some hearts carried storms too heavy to contain. Richard Holloway, a man known to his friends as Rick, was one such soul. A man whose life was unraveling, thread by thread, until a single night of rage changed everything. This is the story of Rick's descent, a tale of love twisted into violence and the long shadow of remorse that followed. Settle in, let the rain outside weave its soothing rhythm, and step with us into a story that cuts deep into the fragility of the human spirit. Rick Holloway wasn't always a man defined by his mistakes. In his early years, he was a dreamer, the kind of guy who'd light up a room with his quick laugh and easy charm. Born in Bloomington in 1975, he grew up in a working-class family, his father a mechanic, his mother a school secretary. Rick was their only child, doted on but never spoiled. Raised with values of hard work and loyalty, he wasn't a star student, but he had a knack for fixing things. Cars, appliances, anything with moving parts. After high school, he took a job at a local auto shop, his hands always stained with grease, his smile a fixture in the community. To those who knew him, Rick was dependable, the guy you called when your car broke down or you needed a hand moving furniture. But there was another side to Rick, one that emerged slowly, like a crack spreading through glass. He'd always been a drinker, beers with the guys after work, whiskey on weekends, but by his 30s, alcohol was more than a pastime. It was a crutch. The auto shop wasn't paying enough, and Rick's dreams of owning his own garage were slipping away. Bills piled up, and the weight of unmet expectations pressed harder each year. He started drinking alone, bottles of bourbon stashed in the garage, his temper flaring over small things. A late dinner, a misplaced tool. The man who'd once been the life of the party was becoming someone else, someone darker. That's when Lisa came into his life. Lisa Carter was a nurse, 5 years younger than Rick, with a quiet strength and a smile that could calm a storm. They met in 2009 at a local bar, where Rick, sober for once, cracked a joke that made her laugh. Their connection was instant, a spark that felt like salvation. Lisa saw the good in Rick, the man who fixed her car for free, who listened when she talked about her long shifts at the hospital. Rick saw in Lisa a chance to start over, to be the man he'd always wanted to be. They moved in together within a year, renting a small house on the edge of town. For a while, it was good. They talked about marriage, kids, a future where the past didn't weigh so heavy. But the cracks in Rick's soul hadn't healed. They'd only been patched over. The drinking crept back, subtle at first. A beer after dinner, a shot to unwind. Lisa noticed, but she loved him, believed she could help him. She gently suggested he cut back, offered to spend evenings sober together. Rick would nod, promised to try, but the promises were hollow. By 2011, the bourbon was a nightly ritual, and with it came the argument. Small disagreements, money, chores, escalated into shouting matches. Rick's temper, once a rare flare, became a wildfire. Lisa, patient but not English, started pulling away, her warmth replaced by caution. The night of April 17, 2012 was the breaking point. It was a Tuesday, the air thick with spring humidity. Rick had been laid off from the auto shop that morning, a casualty of budget cuts. He spent the day at a dive bar, drowning his anger in whiskey, his mind spiraling. Lisa was working a double shift at the hospital, unaware of the storm brewing. When she got home around 10 p.m., exhausted and aching, she found Rick in the living room, a half-empty bottle on the coffee table. The TV blared, but his eyes were fixed on her, dark with something she didn't recognize. The argument started over nothing, a comment about Rick's drinking, Lisa's tone sharper than usual. But it wasn't about the words. It was about everything unspoken, the job loss, the shame, the fear that their love was slipping away. Rick's voice rose, his hands clenched into fists. Lisa stood her ground, refusing to back down, her own frustration boiling over. Then, in a moment that would haunt them both, Rick snapped. He grabbed her by the arms, shoving her against the wall. Lisa fought back, scratching at his face. But Rick was stronger, his rage blinding. He hit her, a single, brutal blow to the jaw that sent her crumpling to the floor. The room went silent, save for the hum of the TV. Rick stood frozen, his breath ragged, staring at Lisa as she clutched her face, blood trickling from her lip. The reality of what he'd done crashed over him like a wave. Lisa's eyes, wide with shock and betrayal, cut deeper than any words could. She scrambled to her feet, grabbing her phone, and locked herself in the bathroom. Rick didn't follow. He sank onto the couch, the bottle slipping from his hand. He was still there, head in his hands, when the police arrived. Lisa's 911 call was brief but steady, her voice trembling but clear. Officers found her in the bathroom, a bruise blooming on her jaw, her eyes red but resolute. Rick didn't resist as they cuffed him, his face blank as if the fight had drained him of everything. At the station, he sat in silence, refusing to answer questions. The charge was domestic battery, a felony given the severity of the assault. Lisa's statement was damning. She described the drinking, the escalating arguments, the moment Rick's hand became a weapon. But she also said something that lingered with the officers. She didn't want him destroyed, just stopped. The days that followed were a blur of shame and consequence. Rick was held in the county jail, his bail set at $10,000. 0 cents, money he didn't have. Lisa moved out, staying with a friend. Her life upended. Bloomington buzzed with gossip. Rick, the guy everyone liked, was now the guy who'd hit his girlfriend. His mother visited him once, her face etched with disappointment. But she couldn't afford the bail either. Rick was alone, the weight of his actions settling like a stone in his chest. He replayed that night endlessly. The sound of Lisa's cry, the feel of his fist connecting, the look in her eyes. It wasn't just guilt. It was a reckoning. The trial was set for August 2012, but Rick's public defender urged him to take a plea. The evidence was overwhelming. Lisa's injuries, her statement, the neighbors who'd heard the shouting. A conviction could mean up to 7 years, maybe more with priors. Rick had a misdemeanor DUI from years back. The plea offered 2 years with credit for time served plus mandatory counseling and probation. Rick, hollowed out by remorse, agreed. He stood before the judge, his voice barely above a whisper as he said, "I'm sorry." The judge, a stern woman with gray hair, looked at him not with pity, but with expectation. "Fix yourself, Mr. Holloway," she said, "or this is just the beginning." Prison was a different kind of hell for Rick. The Indiana State Facility was overcrowded, a maze of concrete and clanging doors. He wasn't a fighter, and his quiet demeanor made him a target. He took a few beatings early on, learning to keep his head down. But the real punishment was the isolation. No visits, no letters. Lisa had cut contact, and his mother was too ashamed to face him. Rick spent his days in the prison library, reading books on addiction and anger, trying to understand the man he'd become. He joined an AA group, sitting in a circle of broken men, their stories echoing his own. Admitting he was an alcoholic was like shedding a skin, painful but necessary. Counseling was mandatory, but Rick leaned into it. His therapist, a no-nonsense woman named Dr. Patel, didn't let him hide. She pushed him to confront the roots of his anger. The unmet dreams, the fear of failure, the father who'd left him with nothing but a name. Rick talked about Lisa, how he'd loved her but hurt her, how he'd turned their home into a battleground. Dr. Patel didn't offer absolution, but she gave him tools, ways to manage his triggers, to rebuild his sense of self. Slowly, Rick began to see a path forward, not to erase his past, but to live with it. Elisa, meanwhile, was rebuilding her own life. The assault left scars, physical and emotional. The bruise faded, but the betrayal lingered. She went to therapy, joined a support group for survivors of domestic violence, and found strength in sharing her story. She didn't hate Rick, not exactly, but she couldn't forgive him. Not yet. She focused on her work, her friends, the small joys of a life free from fear. Bloomington was her home, and she refused to let Rick's actions drive her away. She even started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping others navigate the pain she'd known. Rick was released in early 2014 after serving 18 months with good behavior. He returned to Bloomington, but it wasn't the same. Old friends avoided him. The auto shop wouldn't rehire him. He found work at a warehouse, a grueling job that paid just enough to rent a one-room apartment. Probation was strict, weekly check-ins, random drug tests, no alcohol. Rick stuck to it, attending AA meetings, keeping a journal to track his thoughts. He wrote letters to Lisa, not to send, but to process his guilt. In them, he apologized, not for forgiveness, but because she deserved to hear it. One evening, a year after his release, Rick saw Lisa at a grocery store. She was in the produce aisle, picking apples, her face calm but guarded when she noticed him. Rick froze, his heart pounding. He wanted to speak, to say something that could bridge the chasm between them, but he didn't. He turned and walked away, respecting the distance she needed. It was a small act, but it was his way of honoring her healing. Lisa later told her therapist about it, admitting she felt a flicker of relief. Not forgiveness, but a sign that Rick was trying to be better. Rick's journey wasn't about redemption in the Hollywood sense. No grand gestures, no tearful reunions. It was quieter, messier, a daily choice to face his flaws. He stayed sober, worked his job, and started mentoring at a community center, talking to young men about anger and consequences. His story wasn't polished, but it was honest, and it resonated. He never saw Lisa again, but he carried her in his heart, a reminder of the harm he'd caused and the man he didn't want to be. Villington moved on, but Rick's crime left a mark. The town grappled with its own questions. How had they missed the signs, the slow unraveling of a man they thought they knew? Domestic violence, once a private matter, became a topic of discussion, with local groups pushing for awareness and support. Lisa's work at the shelter grew, her voice a beacon for others, and Rick, in his quiet way, became a cautionary tale, a man who'd fallen but refused to stay down. As the rain falls outside, let Rick Holloway's story settle in your bones. It's a tale of rage, remorse, and the fragile hope of change. But the shadows are restless, and 8 more stories wait to unfold, each one a descent into the choices that haunt us. Stay with Shadows of the Past if you dare for what lies ahead. Part 4, The Redemption of Ivan Santos. In the neon-lit sprawl of Seoul, South Korea, where towering skyscrapers cast long shadows over narrow alleyways, life pulses with a restless energy. Among the crowds, Ivan Santos once walked a young man with dreams too big for the cramped world he was born into. Raised in a gritty neighborhood on the city's fringes, Ivan was shaped by struggle, his heart torn between hope and desperation. But one fateful night, a single reckless choice plunged him into a nightmare of crime and consequence. This is the story of Ivan's fall, a tale of a botched robbery, a family's unwavering love, and a hard-fought path to redemption. Settle in, let the rain outside weave its gentle cadence, and step with us into a world where second chances are earned through blood and tears. Ivan Santos was born in 1990, the only son of Maria, a seamstress who worked long hours in a textile factory, and Jose, a street vendor who sold grilled skewers to late-night crowds. Their life was humble. Their apartment, a single room where love stretched further than money ever could. Ivan grew up fast, his childhood marked by the hum of his mother's sewing machine and the smell of his father's charcoal grill. School was a battle. He was bright but restless, more interested in the stories of the streets than the pages of textbooks. By his teens, Ivan was running errands for local shopkeepers, his quick wit and easy smile earning him small tips and smaller favors. But Seoul was a city of contrasts, and Ivan saw it all. The glittering wealth of Gangnam, the poverty of his own block, the disparity gnawed at him. He wanted more, not just for himself, but for Maria, whose hands were rough from years of labor, and Jose, whose back bent under the weight of endless days. Ivan dreamed of a life where his parents could rest, where they could live without the constant shadow of want. That dream, pure at first, became a fire that burned too hot, leading him to places he'd never meant to go. By 2008, Ivan was 18, out of school and drifting. Legitimate jobs, delivery, construction, paid too little to change his family's fate. He started hanging around a local pool hall, where the air was thick with cigarette smoke and the clink of soju bottles. There, he met Min-ho, a small-time crook with a silver tongue and a knack for trouble. Min-ho was older, charismatic, the kind of guy who made crime sound like a shortcut to glory. He spun tales of easy scores, breaking into warehouses, lifting cash from unsecured shops. To Ivan, it was a siren song, promising the money he needed to lift his family out of poverty. Min-ho saw Ivan as an asset, young, strong, and hungry. He pulled him into a loose crew of petty thieves, teaching him the basics, how to pick a lock, disable a cheap alarm, move in the shadows. Ivan was a quick study, but he wasn't reckless. He stuck to small jobs, grabbing electronics or cash, always careful to avoid violence. The money wasn't much, but it was more than he'd ever earned legally. He hid his earnings from Maria, slipping cash into her purse when she wasn't looking, claiming it came from odd jobs. She believed him. Or wanted to. Her pride in her son blinding her to the truth. The turning point came in late 2009. Min-ho had a new plan, bigger than anything they'd done before. A jewelry store in a quiet district, poorly guarded but stocked with high-end pieces. The owner, an older man, was rumored to keep cash in a backroom safe. Min-ho estimated the haul at 50 million, enough to change their lives. The crew would be 4. Min-ho as the leader, Ivan as the muscle, a hacker named Ji-woo to bypass the alarm, and a driver, Sung, who'd done time for carjacking. Ivan hesitated. This wasn't a smash and grab. It was armed robbery, with guns Min-ho had sourced from a black market contact. But Min-ho pressed, playing on Ivan's loyalty and his dreams. "You want to be a nobody forever?" he asked. "This is for your family." Ivan's conscience screamed, but his desperation was louder. He thought of Maria's tired eyes, Jose's cough that wouldn't go away. He agreed, his heart heavy, with a choice he knew was wrong. The plan was simple: hit the store after closing, tie up the owner, crack the safe, and vanish. Min-ho promised no one would get hurt. The guns were just for show. Ivan clung to that promise, telling himself it was one job, one night, and then he'd be done. He didn't sleep the night before, his mind replaying every step, every risk. By morning, he was resolved, but the weight of his decision clung to him like damp cloth. The robbery was a disaster. It was a chilly November evening, the streets slick with rain. The jewelry store was dark, its neon sign flickering. Ji-woo disabled the alarm, but he was sloppy, triggering a silent backup system no one had anticipated. Inside, the owner, Mr. Park, was still there, counting receipts. Min-ho and Ivan burst in, masks on, guns drawn. Min-ho shouted for Park to get down, but the old man panicked, lunging for a phone. Ivan froze, his gun shaking in his hand. Min-ho, enraged, struck Park with the butt of his pistol, sending him sprawling. Blood pooled on the floor, and Ivan's world tilted. This wasn't supposed to happen. The safe was another problem. Ji-woo couldn't crack it, the combination more complex than expected. Min-ho's composure unraveled, his voice a snarl as he berated the crew. Outside, Sung radioed that police were nearby, drawn by the silent alarm. Panic took over. Min-ho grabbed a handful of necklaces from a display, shoving them into a bag, and ordered everyone out. Ivan, still reeling from Park's bloody face, followed, his mind a blur. They sprinted to the van, but Sung peeled out too fast, clipping a parked car. The crash was loud, drawing eyes, and the police were closing in. Min-ho and Ji-woo bailed, scattering into the alleys. Ivan, slower, less experienced, stumbled as he ran. Sung abandoned the van, leaving Ivan alone. Sirens wailed, lights flashing in the rain. Ivan ducked into a side street, his mask discarded, his breath ragged. He didn't see the patrol car until it was too late. Officers tackled him, the stolen necklaces spilling from his pocket. As the cuffs tightened, Ivan's thoughts weren't of himself, but of Maria, her face when she'd learned what he'd done. At 19, his life was over. The arrest shattered Ivan's world. At the station, he was charged with armed robbery, assault, and attempted murder, crimes that could lock him away for decades. Mr. Parks survived, but his injuries were severe, a fractured skull that left him hospitalized. Ivan's silence during interrogation wasn't defiance, it was shame. He wouldn't name Minho or the others, not out of loyalty, but because he felt he deserved the punishment. The police had little to go on. No prints from the others, no van, just Ivan and the necklaces. He was the scapegoat, and he knew it. Maria was devastated. She visited Ivan in jail, her eyes red from crying, her voice trembling with questions he couldn't answer. "Why, Ivan? Why?" she asked, clutching a rosary. He had no words, only tears. Jose came once, his silence heavier than any lecture. Ivan's guilt was a living thing, clawing at him every night in his cell. He saw Park's blood, Maria's pain, the future he'd thrown away. The public defender assigned to him was young, overworked, but she saw something in Ivan. Remorse, raw and unfeigned. She urged him to plead guilty, to show the court he was more than his crime. The trial was brief, the evidence overwhelming. Security footage showed Ivan's gun, his mask. Park's testimony delivered from a wheelchair was gut-wrenching, his voice steady as he described the terror. The prosecution called Ivan a thug, a danger to society. His defender countered with his clean record, his family support, his youth. Maria took the stand, her words simple but piercing. "He's my son. He's not a monster." The judge, a stern man with tired eyes, saw the conflict. A kid who'd made a terrible choice, a family broken by it. Ivan was sentenced to 15 years. A harsh but not maximum term with a chance for parole in 8. Prison was a crucible. Souls Correctional Facility was a gray fortress, its walls echoing with the shouts of men who'd lost hope. Ivan, young and slight, was an easy target. He took beatings in the yard, learned to fight back, but never hardened his heart. Maria's visits kept him anchored. She came every month, bringing news of home, her faith in him unshaken. "You're more than this place," she'd say, her hand pressed against the glass. Ivan clung to her words, a lifeline in the darkness. A prison counselor, Mr. Kim, noticed Ivan's quiet determination. Kim ran rehabilitation programs. Education, job training, therapy groups. Ivan joined them all, not for parole points, but for himself. He earned his high school diploma, then started college courses, his mind soaking up knowledge like dry earth after rain. In therapy, he faced his crime, dissecting the choices that led him to that night. He wrote to Park, not expecting a reply, apologizing for the pain he'd caused. Park never responded, but the act of writing freed something in Ivan. Maria's love was his compass. She sent letters, photos, even recipes from home, reminding him of the life waiting outside. Jose passed away in 2013, a heart attack that Ivan couldn't mourn in person. The loss hit hard, but Maria's strength held him up. Ivan vowed to honor his father by changing, by being the son Maria deserved. He took up carpentry in the prison workshop, his hands finding purpose in wood and nails. He mentored younger inmates, sharing his mistakes, urging them to choose differently. His sincerity earned respect even from guards who'd seen too many men cycle through. By 2016, Ivan's transformation was undeniable. His counselor and teachers wrote glowing reports, and a prison reform group took notice. They petitioned for early release, citing his rehabilitation and Maria's support. The parole hearing was grueling. Park's family opposed it, their anger raw. But Ivan spoke from the heart, owning his crime, detailing his change. Maria's testimony sealed it, her voice steady as she said, "He's my son, and he's found his way back." The board granted parole, cutting his sentence to 7 years. Ivan walked free in 2017, a man remade. Seoul was overwhelming after prison, its noise and speed dizzying. Maria welcomed him home, her embrace a promise kept. He found work as a carpenter's apprentice, his skills honed in prison. The pay was modest, but it was honest. He visited Jose's grave, leaving flowers and words of regret. Ivan didn't seek Park out. He respected the man's need for distance, but he donated part of his wages to a victims fund, a quiet act of amends. Life wasn't easy. The stigma of his record lingered, and some in the neighborhood shunned him, but Ivan kept going, supported by Maria and a small circle of friends from his prison programs. He enrolled in night classes, studying business, dreaming of opening a carpentry shop. Maria, now retired, helped him save, her pride in him a light that never dimmed. Ivan spoke at community centers, sharing his story with hard-won wisdom. Moment's choice can change everything, he'd say, make it the right one. Soul moved on, but Ivan's crime left echoes. The jewelry store closed, Park never fully recovered, and the community grappled with questions of crime and redemption. Ivan's story became a quiet legend in reform circles, proof that change is possible, even after the darkest mistakes. Maria passed in 2022, her final words to Ivan a blessing: "You made me proud." Her loss broke him, but he carried her love forward, building a life of purpose. As the rain falls outside, let Ivan Santos' story linger in your heart. It's a tale of desperation, consequence, and the fragile beauty of second chances. But the shadows are far from finished. 7 more stories wait, each a journey into the choices that define us or destroy us. Stay with Shadows of the Past if you dare for what comes next. Part 5, The Tragedy of Amir Rahman. In the humid, vibrant streets of Jakarta, Indonesia, in 2015, ambition and tradition wove a delicate balance. Among the city's bustling markets and gleaming high-rises, Amir Rahman stood as a man admired, a successful entrepreneur whose charm masked a storm brewing within. To the world, he was a pillar of his community, a devoted husband and a father with everything to lose. But beneath the polished surface, Amir's life was unraveling, driven by pressures he could neither escape nor control. One fateful night, fueled by alcohol and desperation, he crossed a line that shattered his family and left a legacy of pain. This is the story of Amir's fall, a tale of love twisted into violence and a woman's resilience in its wake. Settle in, let the rain outside hum its mournful tune, and step with us into a tragedy that lingers like a wound that never healed. Amir Rahman was born in 1978 in a modest Jakarta neighborhood, the eldest son of a tailor and a school teacher. His childhood was steeped in discipline and expectation. His parents believed education and hard work were the keys to rising above their circumstances. Amir excelled in school, his quick mind and warm smile earning him praise from teachers and friends alike. He dreamed of building something lasting, a legacy that would honor his family's sacrifices. After earning a business degree from a local university, he started a small logistics company in 2002, ferrying goods across Java. His knack for negotiation and relentless drive turned the venture into a success, and by his early 30s, Amir was a respected figure, his name synonymous with ambition. In 2007, Amir married Sari, a soft-spoken accountant with a quiet strength that grounded him. Their love was genuine, built on shared dreams of a comfortable life and a family. They had 2 children, a daughter, Lila, born in 2009, and a son, Danny, in 2011. To their community, the Rahmans were a model family. Amir, the charismatic provider, Sari, the nurturing heart of the home. They lived in a modern house in South Jakarta, attended mosque together, and hosted gatherings where Amir's laughter filled the air. But success, like all things, came with a shadow. Amir's business thrived, but the pressure to maintain it was relentless. By 2014, competition in the logistics sector had intensified, and Amir was borrowing heavily to expand. He hid the financial strain from Sari, not wanting to burden her, but the weight was crushing. He started drinking, socially at first, a glass of whiskey with clients, a habit acceptable in Jakarta's business circles. But soon, the drinks became a nightly escape, a way to silence the fears of failure that haunted him. Sari noticed the change, his late nights, the sharp edge to his words, but she attributed it to stress, believing love and patience could see them through. The cracks in their marriage deepened as Amir's drinking worsened. He grew irritable, snapping at Sari over small things, a messy kitchen, a late dinner. Leela and Danny, still young, sensed the tension. Their once lively home, now quiet with unease. Sari tried to talk to Amir, urging him to seek help, but he brushed her off, his pride a barrier. "I'm fine," he'd say, his voice clipped. "This is just business." But it wasn't just business. Amir was drowning. Not in debt, but in the fear of losing the identity he built. The man who'd once been a beacon of control was slipping, and no one could pull him back. The night of June 12, 2015 was a breaking point. It was a sweltering evening, the air thick with the promise of rain. Amir had spent the day in a heated meeting with creditors who demanded payments he couldn't make. He stopped at a bar on the way home, downing whiskey until the world blurred. By the time he stumbled into the house, it was past midnight. Sari was awake, sitting at the kitchen table, her face etched with worry. The children were asleep, the house silent except for the hum of a ceiling fan. Sari's voice was soft but firm. "We need to talk, Amir. This can't go on." The words, meant to reach him, struck like a spark on dried tinder. Amir's face darkened, his voice rising. "You think you know what I'm dealing with?" he shouted. "You don't know anything." Sari stood her ground, her own frustration spilling out. She spoke of the children, their fear, her own exhaustion. The argument escalated, years of unspoken pain pouring out. Then, in a moment that would define them both, Amir's control snapped. He grabbed a heavy glass ashtray from the table and swung it at Sari, striking her temple. She fell, blood seeping onto the tiled floor, her body still. The silence that followed was deafening. Amir stood over her, the ashtray slipping from his hand, his breath ragged. Sari was alive, barely, her pulse faint. Panic seized him. Not remorse, not yet, but fear of what he'd done. He called an ambulance, his voice trembling as he lied, claiming she'd fallen. Paramedics arrived, rushing Sari to the hospital where doctors fought to save her. She had a fractured skull, a brain bleed, injuries that teetered on the edge of fatal. Amir sat in the waiting room, his shirt stained with her blood, his mind a chaos of denial and dread. The police came soon after. A neighbor, woken by the shouting, had called them, reporting a disturbance. Sari, semi-conscious, told a nurse the truth. Amir had hit her. The nurse, bound by protocol, informed the authorities. Officers arrested Amir at the hospital, his face blank, his hands shaking as they cuffed him. At the station, he said nothing, his silence a shield against the reality crashing down. The charges were severe: attempted murder, aggravated assault, crimes that could lock him away for life in Indonesia's harsh penal system. Sari's survival was a miracle, but her recovery was grueling. She spent weeks in the hospital, her children staying with her sister, their world upended. The physical wounds healed slowly. Scars, headaches, moments of dizziness, but the emotional toll was deeper. Sari grappled with betrayal. The man she'd loved, now a stranger who'd nearly killed her. She refused to see Amir, her focus on Lila and Dani, who were too young to understand but old enough to feel the loss. Sari's family urged her to press charges, to let Amir face the full weight of his actions. But her heart was torn. She didn't want vengeance, she wanted her family back, a wish that could never be granted. Amir's arrest was a scandal in Jakarta's tight-knit community. The man who'd been a role model, generous, devout, successful, was now a pariah. Gossip swirled. Some blamed Sari, others alcohol, but most saw Amir's fall as a warning. His business crumbled, clients abandoning him, his employees left jobless, his parents devastated, visited him in jail, their shame tempered by love. Amir's mother wept, asking why he'd let this happen. He had no answer, only a hollow stare. The weight of his actions was sinking in. Each day in his cell, a mirror reflecting the man he'd become. The trial began in October 2015, a public spectacle that drew media attention. Indonesia's legal system was unforgiving, and domestic violence, though often hushed, was a growing concern. Prosecutors painted Amir as a monster, a man who'd betrayed his family's trust. Sari's testimony, delivered via video due to her fragile health, was heartbreaking. She spoke of their love, his decline, the night that changed everything. "I trusted him," she said, her voice breaking, "and he broke me." The courtroom was silent, the weight of her words palpable. Amir's defense argued he was a man under pressure, not a criminal by nature. They cited his clean record, his contributions to the community, his remorse. Amir took the stand, his voice low, admitting his guilt. "I failed her," he said of Sari. "I failed them all." He spoke of the drinking, the stress, but didn't deflect blame. The judge, a woman with a reputation for fairness, listened intently. She saw a man who'd done something unforgivable, but also one who owned it. In a country where leniency was rare, she sentenced Amir to 12 years, a long term but not life, with a chance for parole in 8. Prison was a descent into a world Amir had never known. The facility outside Jakarta was overcrowded, its air thick with despair. Amir, once a man of status, was now just a number, subject to the prison's brutal hierarchy. He kept to himself, avoiding the gangs that ruled the yard. His faith, neglected in recent years, became a refuge. He prayed daily, the rituals grounding him in a place that stripped away identity. He wrote letters to Sari and the children, not to send but to process his guilt. Each word was a step toward facing the man he'd been. Sari, meanwhile, was rebuilding. She moved with Lila and Dani to a smaller apartment supported by her family and a counselor who helped her navigate the trauma. She returned to work, her strength a beacon for her children. Lila, old enough to ask questions, struggled with her father's absence. But Sari shielded her from the worst, focusing on love and stability. She joined a women's support group, sharing her story, finding solace in others who'd survived similar pain. Sari's resilience grew, her scars a testament to her survival, not her defeat. In prison, Amir enrolled in every program available: anger management, vocational training, even a literacy course to help inmates write letters home. He excelled, his sincerity earning the respect of guards and counselors. A prison imam, noticing Amir's devotion, mentored him, guiding him through reflections on faith and accountability. Amir began counseling younger inmates, sharing his mistakes, urging them to value their families. His transformation wasn't for parole. It was for himself, for the children he might never see again, for the wife whose life he'd nearly taken. By 2020, Amir's progress was undeniable. A prison reform advocate, moved by his counselor's reports, petitioned for early release. Sari was contacted, her input critical. She was torn. Her pain was real, but so was Amir's change, evident in the letters he'd sent through the advocate, filled with remorse and accountability. She didn't forgive him, but she didn't want him to rot. At the parole hearing, she spoke via letter, saying, "He's taken enough from us. Let him prove he's more than his worst moment." The board, swayed by her words and Amir's record, granted parole after 6 years. Amir was released in 2021, a man humbled by his past. Jakarta was daunting, its familiarity laced with loss. His parents welcomed him, their forgiveness a fragile gift. He found work as a mechanic, a job far from his old life, but honest. He didn't contact Sari, respecting her boundaries, but sent support payments through her family, every rupiah a small amends. Sari, now a leader at her support group, heard of his efforts. She didn't reach out, but she felt a quiet relief. He was trying, and that was enough. Amir's crime left ripples. Jakarta's community grappled with domestic violence, spurred by Sari's advocacy to push for awareness and resources. Lila and Danny grew up strong, their mother's love a shield against their father's shadow. Amir lived quietly, his faith and purpose his anchors. He volunteered at a youth center, warning boys about the cost of anger, his story raw and real. He didn't seek redemption's spotlight, only the chance to live better than he'd fallen. Sari became a symbol of resilience, her work at the women's shelter saving lives, her voice a call for change. She never remarried, her heart guarded, but full for her children. Amir's name faded from Jakarta's gossip, but his lesson endured. Love can break, but so can cycles of violence if we choose to mend them. As the rain falls outside, let Amira Rahman's story seep into your soul. It's a tale of destruction, remorse, and the quiet strength of those who rise from the ashes. But the shadows are restless, and 6 more stories wait, each a descent into the choices that scar us. Stay with Shadows of the Past if you dare, for what lies ahead. Part 6, The Empire of Thomas Langley. In the glittering sprawl of Los Angeles, 2016 was a year where ambition burned bright and the line between dreams and deceit was razor thin. Amid the city's palm-lined boulevards and rooftop parties, Thomas Langley moved like a phantom. Charming, elusive, a man who promised wealth and delivered ruin. To the world, he was a visionary consultant, a master of markets, but beneath the polished veneer lay a predator weaving a web of lies that ensnared hundreds. This is the story of Langley's rise and fall, a tale of greed, betrayal, and the relentless pursuit of justice by those he left broken. Settle in, let the rain outside hum its mournful lullaby, and step with us into a world where trust was a currency and Langley was its thief. Thomas Langley wasn't born to privilege. Raised in a small town in Pennsylvania in the 1970s, his childhood was a battleground. His father, an alcoholic prone to violent outbursts, ruled the house with fear while his mother, emotionally distant, offered little refuge. Young Thomas learned early that survival meant manipulation, charming teachers to overlook his truancy, coaxing neighbors for favors, spinning lies to dodge his father's wrath. By his teens, he was a master at reading people, using his sharp mind and disarming smile to bend the world to his will. School was a means to an end. He graduated with decent grades but no attachments, his sights set on escaping the suffocating town that had shaped him. College was Langley's first stage. At a modest Pennsylvania university, he majored in business, not for love of the subject, but for its promise of power. He was a chameleon, blending into frat houses and study groups, always pitching small schemes, fake concert tickets, pyramid scams disguised as investment clubs. These were rehearsals, testing his ability to persuade, to make people believe in illusions. He graduated in 1999, his diploma less important than the lessons he'd learned. Trust was a weakness, and wealth was a game of perception. Langley moved to New York, dipping into finance, but the city's cutthroat pace didn't suit him. By 2005, he landed in Los Angeles, a place where image was everything, and he knew he could thrive. LA was Langley's playground. The city's mix of dreamers and deal makers was fertile ground for his talents. He started Langley Enterprises, a consulting firm that promised to unlock financial success for businesses and individuals. The setup was impeccable. A sleek office in Century City, modern furniture, a website dripping with buzzwords like disruptive innovation and exclusive opportunities. He hired a small staff, bright, unaware young professionals who believed in his vision, and crafted a persona as a brilliant strategist. His pitch was simple but irresistible. Invest with him, and he'd deliver returns the average market couldn't touch. To early clients, mostly small entrepreneurs, he delivered modest gains, just enough to build trust. But Langley's real game was darker. By 2010, he'd begun constructing a Ponzi scheme, a house of cards built on lies and stolen dreams. He targeted wealthier clients, doctors, real estate developers, even minor celebrities, offering them high-risk, high-reward investments in ventures like tech startups and overseas real estate. The returns he promised, 20%, 30% annually, were too good to be true, and that was the point. He paid early investors with money from new ones, creating the illusion of success. The cash flowed in, millions at a time, and Langley's lifestyle reflected it. The Hollywood Hills mansion, the fleet of sports cars, parties where champagne flowed like water. To his clients, he was a king, untouchable. The scheme grew exponentially, but so did its fragility. By 2016, Langley had taken in over $100 million, 0 cents. His network spanning hundreds of investors across the U.S. He was meticulous, using offshore accounts and shell companies to obscure the money's movement. His staff, kept in the dark, handled legitimate consulting work, unaware their boss was a fraud. But cracks were forming. Some investors, impatient for bigger payouts, demanded proof of their returns. Langley, ever the smooth talker, deflected with excuses, market fluctuations, delayed deals, but the pressure was mounting. He grew erratic, his charm fraying, his nights spent pacing, plotting his next move. Behind the scenes, Langley's past was catching up. His childhood had left him with a need for control, a hunger to prove he was more than the scared boy dodging his father's fists. The money wasn't enough. He craved the power of bending others to his will. He cultivated loyalty in his inner circle, rewarding them with lavish gifts while keeping them at arm's length. But loyalty is fragile, and Langley's arrogance blinded him to the discontent brewing among his allies. A financial analyst named Jason Miller began to suspect the truth. Jason had joined Langley Enterprises early, drawn by the promise of wealth, but the numbers didn't add up. Too many payouts, too few assets. He kept quiet, fearing for his job, but the doubt festered. The FBI was already circling. In 2015, a string of suspicious transactions flagged by banks had led to Langley's shell companies. Agent Laura Bennett, a tenacious investigator with a knack for unraveling financial webs, took the case. She spent months tracing the money, piecing together a puzzle that pointed to Langley. His operation was a masterpiece of deception, but Bennett was relentless, her nights filled with spreadsheets and coffee, her determination fueled by the victims she'd yet to meet. She knew Langley was a ghost, his digital footprint scrubbed, his records clean. But ghosts leave traces, and Bennett found hers in Jason Miller. Jason's unease became his undoing. He'd started asking questions, subtle at first, but Langley's paranoia caught the scent. One night over drinks, Langley tested him, probing for loyalty. Jason, nervous, played along, but his hesitation was enough. Langley demoted him, cutting him out of key deals. It was a mistake. Jason, resentful and scared, became the weak link. Bennett's team, monitoring Langley's network, noticed Jason's sudden distance. They approached him with an offer: cooperate or face charges as an accomplice. Jason, cornered, chose survival. He spilled everything: the shell companies, the fake investments, Langley's offshore accounts. In exchange, he'd get immunity, Langley sensed the walls closing in. Investors were growing restless, some filing complaints with the Better Business Bureau, prompting scrutiny. He started liquidating assets, funneling money to accounts in the Cayman Islands, planning an escape to a country without extradition. He was days from vanishing when Bennett struck. In late 2019, a raid on his mansion caught him off guard. Agents found encrypted drives, fake passports, a ledger detailing every transaction. Langley didn't resist. He sat calmly, his face a mask of calculation, as if he'd already moved on to his next play. The trial was a media frenzy, dominating headlines in 2020. Langley Enterprises had defrauded over 400 investors, with losses exceeding $120 million, 0 cents. The courtroom was packed with victims, retirees who'd lost pensions, families who'd mortgaged homes, entrepreneurs whose dreams were ashes. Their testimonies were raw, filled with rage and grief. Rebecca Grant, a former tech executive who'd invested her retirement fund, spoke of the betrayal, her voice steady but heavy. "He made us feel special," she said, "and then he took everything." Langley's defense argued he was a product of a ruthless system, a man chasing the American dream. But the evidence was crushing. Bank records, Jason's testimony, the digital trail Bennett had meticulously built. Langley's composure cracked only once when a victim, a single mother who'd lost her life savings, stared him down. Tears streaming, he looked away, his jaw tight. The judge, unmoved by his polished exterior, called his scheme a calculated assault on trust. In 2020, Langley was sentenced to 30 years, one of the longest terms for financial fraud in LA history. As he was led away, his eyes scanned the room, not with remorse, but with the cold assessment of a man already plotting his next move. The aftermath was chaos. Victims formed support groups, led by Rebecca Grant, pooling resources to track Langley's hidden assets. They hired private investigators, uncovering accounts in Panama and Luxembourg. But most of the money was gone, spent on Langley's lavish life or tucked away beyond reach. Rebecca became an advocate, speaking at financial seminars, warning of the signs of fraud. Her work saved others, but for her the loss was permanent. Her retirement, her trust, her sense of security. Langley's empire left scars across Los Angeles. The city, built on dreams, grappled with its vulnerability to men like him. His case spurred tighter regulations on investment firms, but the dark web markets he'd exploited thrived, waiting for the next predator. In prison, Langley remained an enigma, charming inmates, teaching business classes as if the game never ended. Some say he's planning a comeback, others believe he's accepted his cage. Either way, his name is a warning etched in the city's memory. The victims, though, were the heart of the story. Rebecca and others rebuilt not with money, but with resilience. They shared their stories, turning pain into purpose, ensuring Langley's legacy was one of caution, not triumph. Their fight wasn't just for justice, but for the dignity he'd stolen, a reminder that even in the wake of betrayal, the human spirit endures. As the rain falls outside, let Thomas Langley's story linger like a chill in your bones. It's a tale of greed, deception, and the cost of blind trust. But the shadows are far from done. 5 more stories wait, each a descent into the choices that break us or make us. Stay with Shadows of the Past if you dare, for what lies ahead. Part 7, The Phantom of Nicholas Carter. In the electric pulse of New York City, 2018 was a year where ambition and avarice danced in the shadows of skyscrapers. Among the city's elite, Nicholas Carter was a name whispered with reverence. A charismatic financier whose promises of wealth drew the powerful like moths to a flame. Beneath his tailored suits and disarming smile lay a predator, crafting a mirage of prosperity that would vanish as swiftly as he did. This is the story of Carter's grand deception, a Ponzi scheme that bled millions from the unsuspecting, a manhunt that gripped a nation, and a ghost who remains at large. Settle in, let the rain outside weave its haunting rhythm, and step with us into a world where trust was a trap and Nicholas Carter was its master. Nicholas Carter wasn't born to the glitter of Manhattan, raised in a working-class suburb of Chicago in the 1980s. His early life was unremarkable, marked by a restless hunger for more. His father, a factory worker, preached the virtues of honest labor, but young Nicholas saw the world differently. Money, he learned, was power, and power was freedom. A gifted student, he excelled at reading people, His charm a tool honed in schoolyards and family gatherings. By his teens, he was running small hustles, selling fake concert tickets, skimming cash from fundraisers, each scheme a test of his ability to bend trust to his will. College was a stepping stone. At a mid-tier university, Nicholas studied finance, not for love of numbers, but for the doors it opened. He was a chameleon, slipping into elite circles, mimicking the confidence of those born to wealth. His early scams were modest, fake investment clubs, forged internship offers, but they taught him a crucial lesson. People wanted to believe in something extraordinary, and he could sell that dream. After graduating in 2005, he drifted through Chicago's financial sector, a brief stint at a brokerage firm, sharpening his skills. But Chicago felt small, its opportunities limited. By 2010, he set his sights on New York, the city where fortunes were made and lost in a heartbeat. Manhattan was Carter's canvas. He arrived with little but his ambition and a knack for reinvention. He crafted a new persona. Nicholas Carter, seasoned investor, a man with insider knowledge and a track record of success. His credentials were fabricated, his references ghosts, but his confidence was unshakable. He rented a sleek office in a midtown skyscraper, the kind where glass walls and minimalist decor screamed legitimacy. Carter Capital was born, a private equity firm promising high-yield, low-risk investments that outshone traditional markets. His pitch was a masterpiece. Exclusive opportunities, curated for the elite, with returns that seemed almost magical. Carter's early clients were acquaintances from his Chicago days, small-time investors eager for a break. He delivered modest payouts, using their own money and fresh investments to create the illusion of profit. Word spread, and soon he was courting New York's upper crust. Entrepreneurs, CEOs, even celebrities. Victoria Grant, a socialite and philanthropist, was among his first high-profile catches. Her investment and her endorsement opened doors to Manhattan's elite. Carter threw lavish parties at rooftop venues, mingling with the city's power players, his charisma a magnet. To them, he was a visionary, a man who'd cracked the code to wealth. But Carter Capital was a house of cards, a Ponzi scheme built on lies. By 2017, Carter had taken in millions, promising returns he couldn't sustain. He paid early investors with new money, keeping the cycle alive while funneling cash into risky ventures, volatile stocks, speculative real estate, cryptocurrencies to cover losses. His lifestyle was extravagant, a penthouse in Tribeca, private jets, tailored suits that cost more than most people's rent. He cultivated an image of invincibility, his social media a curated gallery of success. But beneath the gloss, the scheme was fraying. New investments slowed and Carter's risky bets were failing, draining the funds needed to maintain the illusion. Carter's genius was his control. He kept his operation tight, with a small staff of loyal but unaware employees handling legitimate paperwork. His financial records were a labyrinth, layered with shell companies and offshore accounts in places like the Caymans and Belize. He used encrypted platforms for communication, burner phones for sensitive calls, ensuring no trail led directly to him. But genius breeds arrogance, and Carter's was his downfall. He flaunted his wealth, Instagram posts from yacht parties, Rolexes glinting in selfies, drawn eyes he couldn't afford. Among those eyes were the FBI's. Agent Daniel Torres, a veteran of financial crimes, had been tracking suspicious transactions linked to Carter Capital since late 2016. The sums were staggering, millions moving through accounts with no clear source, but the trail was faint, obscured by Carter's meticulous cover. Torres was relentless, his team sifting through bank records, cross-referencing shell companies, building a case brick by brick. They needed a break, and it came from an unlikely source, a whistleblower. Sarah Kim, a junior analyst at Carter Capital, had grown uneasy. The financial reports she handled didn't add up. Payouts exceeded assets, and Carter's explanations were vague. She dug deeper, risking her job, and found discrepancies that pointed to fraud. Sarah's suspicions crystallized one night when she overheard Carter on a call, promising an investor returns he couldn't possibly deliver. She copied files, risking everything, and contacted the FBI. Her evidence, internal memos, account logs, was the key Torres needed. By mid-2018, the investigation intensified, but Carter was a step ahead. He sensed the scrutiny, fewer clients were signing on, and whispers of audits reached his ears. He started liquidating assets, moving money offshore, preparing to vanish. His staff noticed his erratic behavior. Missed meetings, curt responses, but none suspected the truth until it was too late. In September 2018, Carter disappeared. His office was cleared out overnight, his phone lines dead, his penthouse empty. The FBI raided Carter Capital the next day, finding only traces, a few hard drives, shredded documents, a ghost of an empire. Torres's team traced Carter's last movements to a private airport where he'd boarded a flight under an alias. Destination unknown. The manhunt was on. One of the most high-profile in recent years, posters with Carter's face, sharp jaw, piercing eyes, plastered New York, his name a headline. The FBI scoured his network, but his aliases and offshore accounts were a maze, each lead a dead end. The victims were left reeling. Victoria Grant, who'd invested millions, was devastated, her reputation tarnished by her association with Carter. She'd hosted events for him, vouched for his genius, only to learn it was a lie. Alan Simmons, a tech entrepreneur, lost his company's future, his savings drained in Carter's scheme. Their stories were echoed by hundreds, retirers, professionals, dreamers, who believed in Carter's promises. The financial toll was staggering, over $80 million, 0 cents gone, but the emotional cost was deeper. Trust, once shattered, left scars that didn't fade. Victoria withdrew from society, her philanthropy paused while Alan grappled with self-doubt, his once sharp instincts questioned. The FBI's pursuit was relentless. Torres followed leads to Miami, where Carter was spotted at a high-end restaurant meeting men tied to money laundering. A raid on a storage unit uncovered passports, cash, and documents hinting at Carter's plans. A new identity, a new scheme, perhaps in Europe or South America. But each time they closed in, Carter slipped away, his network of contacts shielding him. Rumors swirled he was in Panama, then Dubai, then Brazil. His ability to vanish was uncanny, a testament to his planning. Torres, haunted by the case, worked late nights driven by the faces of Carter's victims, their lives upended by a man who seemed untouchable. Carter's disappearance became a legend, his name synonymous with deception. Documentaries dissected his scheme, analysts marveled at its sophistication, but the man himself remained a shadow. The FBI uncovered more of his network, fake companies, laundered funds through small banks, but the money was gone, scattered across jurisdictions beyond reach. Victims filed lawsuits, but recovery was slim. Option Victoria and Alan joined others in a coalition, sharing stories, seeking closure, but the absence of Carter gnawed at them. They wanted justice, not just for the money, but for the betrayal, the way he'd made them feel complicit in their own ruin. New York, a city that thrives on reinvention, felt Carter's sting. His scam exposed the vulnerability of even the savviest, a reminder that charisma could mask malice. Financial advisors tightened scrutiny, regulators pushed for oversight, but the dark pools Carter exploited, unregulated markets, offshore havens, persisted, waiting for the next player. His story was a cautionary tale taught in business schools, debated in boardrooms, a warning of what happens when greed outpaces caution. In the years since, Carter's fate remains a mystery. Some believe he's living quietly, a new name in a new country, his wealth sustaining him. Others think he's gone underground, biding time for another score. Torres, now retired, still checks leads, unable to let go. The victims, though, found strength in moving forward. Victoria rebuilt her philanthropy, quieter but resolute. Alan launched a new venture, his resilience a defiance of Carter's shadow. They and hundreds like them carried the weight of his crimes, but refused to be defined by it. Carter's ghost lingers, a specter in the city's memory. His face, once a symbol of promise, is now a warning, a reminder that the most dangerous lies are the ones we want to believe. Somewhere perhaps he's watching, planning, his mind still spinning schemes, or maybe he's just a man, alone with his choices, haunted by the lives he cast. Either way, the shadows he cast stretched long, untouched by the light of justice. As the rain falls outside, let Nicholas Carter's story settle like a chill in your veins. It's a tale of deception, loss, and the elusive hunt for truth. But the shadows are not yet sated. 4 more stories wait, each a plunge into the choices that unravel us. Stay with shadows of the past, if you dare, for what lies ahead. Part 8, The Mirage of Lucas Davidson. In the sun-soaked sprawl of Los Angeles in 2016, where innovation and illusion collided, the promise of the next big thing hung heavy in the air. Amid the city's tech hubs and trendy lofts, Lucas Davidson emerged as a rising star, a young entrepreneur whose vision of a tech revolution captivated dreamers and investors alike. With his boyish charm and bold promises, he painted a future of artificial intelligence and blockchain that seemed within reach. But beneath the glossy pitches and polished demos lay a house of lies, a fraudulent empire that would collapse under its own weight. This is the story of Lucas Davidson's meteoric rise and catastrophic fall. A tale of ambition unchecked, trust betrayed, and a city left to reckon with its own hunger for the extraordinary. Settle in, let the rain outside hum its somber melody, and step with us into a world where dreams were sold and the cost was everything. Lucas Davidson wasn't born to the elite circles he'd later charm. Raised in a modest suburb of Sacramento in the 1980s, his childhood was ordinary, tinged with the quiet struggles of a single mother who worked as a nurse to keep the lights on. Lucas was bright, a curious kid who tinkered with computers and devoured sci-fi novels, dreaming of a life beyond the confines of his small world. School was a mixed bag. He excelled in math and science, but chafed at authority, his restless energy often landing him in trouble. By his teens, he was coding basic programs, selling them to classmates for pocket money, his entrepreneurial spark already flickering. College was where Lucas began to shine. At UC Davis, he studied computer science, not for the degree, but for the skills that could unlock bigger doors. He was charismatic, a natural storyteller who could make complex text sound like poetry. He joined startup clubs, pitching ideas at hackathons, his confidence outpacing his experience. Small successes, apps sold for a few thousand, freelance coding gigs, fed his belief that he was destined for greatness. After graduating in 2010, he moved to Los Angeles, drawn to its burgeoning tech scene, a place where Silicon Valley's shadow didn't loom so large, and a young hustler could carve out a name. LA was a perfect stage for Lucas. The city's mix of dreamers, investors, and influencers was ripe for his talents. He started Nova Ventures in 2013, a company billed as a pioneer in AI and blockchain technology. The pitch was dazzling. Nova would build platforms that merged AI-driven analytics with decentralized finance, revolutionizing industries from healthcare to real estate. Lucas rented a loft in downtown LA, decked it out with sleek monitors and neon accents, and hired a small team of coders and marketers who believed in his vision. His website was a masterpiece of jargon, machine learning, smart contracts, tokenized assets, designed to dazzle those who didn't dig too deep. Lucas's real gift was persuasion. He wasn't a tech genius. His coding skills were solid but not groundbreaking, but he could sell a dream like no one else. He targeted angel investors, wealthy professionals hungry for the next unicorn startup. Emily Park, a venture capitalist with a knack for spotting trends, was one of his first big wins. She invested $500,000, 0 cents after a single pitch, captivated by Lucas's energy and the promise of 30% returns within a year. Her endorsement opened doors to others, doctors, entertainment executives, even a retired NBA player. Lucas threw lavish launch parties, renting out rooftop venues with VR demos and celebrity DJs, creating a buzz that made Nova seem unstoppable. But Nova Ventures was a mirage. The tech was half-baked, demos cobbled together from open-source code, prototypes that crashed behind closed doors. Lucas promised products that didn't exist, timelines he couldn't meet. Instead of building, he spent investor money on appearances, private jets, a leased Tesla, a wardrobe of designer hoodies that screamed tech mogul. The rest went to risky bets, crypto trades, speculative stocks, hoping to hit a jackpot that would cover his lies. It was a Ponzi scheme dressed in Silicon Valley sheen, with new investments paying for old promises, the cycle sustained by Lucas's relentless hustle. By 2016, Nova had raised over $20 million, 0 cents. Its investor list, a who's who of LA's ambitious. Lucas was a darling of the tech scene, profiled in local magazines as the next Elon Musk. But the pressure was crushing. Investors like Emily Park were asking for progress reports, demos that worked, returns that materialized. Lucas stalled with excuses, technical delays, market shifts. While his team grew frustrated, their work undermined by his impossible demands. Behind the scenes, he was unraveling, his nights fueled by Red Bull and anxiety, his days a blur of pitches to keep the money flowing. The cracks became impossible to hide. A coder named Rachel, one of Nova's early hires, noticed discrepancies, budgets with no clear purpose, funds funneled to obscure accounts, She confronted Lucas, who brushed her off with a smile and a vague promise of big things coming. Rachel wasn't convinced. She started digging, accessing internal servers, finding emails that hinted at fraud. Scared but resolute, she copied files and quit, taking her evidence to the SEC. Her whistleblower report was the spark that would ignite Lucas's downfall, though she'd never know how far the flames would spread. The FBI was already sniffing around. Suspicious transactions, large sums moving through Nova's accounts with no clear output, had caught their attention in late 2015. Agent Maria Cortez, a financial crimes specialist, took the case, her instincts sharpened by years of chasing fraudsters. She saw Nova's hype as a red flag, its promises too polished, its founder too perfect. Rachel's evidence, delivered anonymously, was the break Cortez needed. It revealed a web of shell companies, offshore transfers, and fabricated financials. Cortez's team moved quietly, building a case while Lucas, oblivious, kept spinning his lies. Lucas sensed trouble, but didn't know its shape. Investors were getting pushy, some threatening lawsuits. He doubled down, announcing a game-changing product launch to buy time, but the demo, a clunky AI chatbot, flopped, drawing skepticism from tech blogs. His team was fracturing, key engineers jumping ship, their faith in Lucas gone. By mid-2016, he was desperate. His risky crypto bets tanking, his accounts bleeding. He started planning an exit, moving money to a Belize account, researching countries with no extradition. He was days from fleeing when Cortez's team closed in. The raid came in July 2016, a pre-dawn operation that hit Nova's loft and Lucas's Hollywood apartment simultaneously. Agents found laptops, thumb drives, and a notebook with coded account numbers. Lucas wasn't there. He'd slipped out the night before, tipped off by a panic call from a former employee. The FBI traced him to LAX, where he'd boarded a flight to Rio de Janeiro under an alias. Cortez coordinated with Interpol, and Brazilian authorities nabbed Lucas 3 days later, lounging on a yacht he'd rented with stolen funds. He was extradited to the U.S., his charm useless against the weight of evidence. The trial in 2018 was a spectacle. LA's tech scene laid bare. Lucas faced charges of wire fraud, money laundering, and securities fraud with losses totaling $22 million, 0 cents. The courtroom was packed with victims. Emily Park, who'd lost her firm's credibility, a doctor who'd gambled his savings, a single mother who believed in Lucas's dream. Their testimonies were searing, filled with anger and shame. Emily, once his biggest cheerleader, spoke of the betrayal, her voice steady but raw. He sold us a future that didn't exist, she said. Lucas's defense painted him as a dreamer who'd overreached, not a criminal mastermind. But the evidence was damning. Rachel's files, bank records, his own emails boasting of fooling the sheep. Lucas took the stand, a gamble that backfired. His charm, once his greatest weapon, felt hollow. His excuses, market pressures, technical hurdles, ringing false. The jury saw a man who'd chosen greed over integrity, who'd exploited trust for personal gain. In a rare moment of candor, he admitted, "I wanted to be someone who mattered." The judge, unmoved, called his scheme a deliberate theft of hope. Lucas was sentenced to 25 years, a term that stunned the tech world, a warning to others chasing fame over substance. The fallout was profound. Victims like Emily formed advocacy groups, pushing for stricter oversight of startups, their losses a permanent scar. Emily rebuilt her career, her caution now a shield, but the trust she'd once given freely was gone. Others weren't so lucky. Some lost homes, retirements, futures. Nova's collapse exposed LA's tech scene as a Wild West, where hype often outpaced reality. Regulators cracked down, but the allure of the next big thing persisted, a siren song for new dreamers and new frauds. Lucas in prison was a shadow of his former self. Stripped of his charisma stage, he faded into the system, teaching coding classes to inmates, his brilliance a flicker in a cage. Some say he's repentant, others that he's biding time, plotting a comeback. His name became a cautionary tale, whispered in startup pitches, a reminder that ambition without ethics is a path to ruin. The victims, though, were the story's heart. Emily and others turned pain into purpose, speaking at conferences, mentoring young entrepreneurs, ensuring Lucas's legacy was one of warning, not triumph. They rebuilt, not with the money they lost, but with the strength to carry on, the resilience, a defiance of the mirage Lucas had sold. As the rain falls outside, let Lucas Davidson's story settle like ash in your mind. It's a tale of illusion, betrayal, and the fragile line between vision and deceit. But the shadows hunger for more. 3 stories remain, each a descent into the choices that haunt us. Stay with Shadows of the Past, if you dare, for what lies ahead. Part 9, The Deceptions of Tom Henderson. In the quiet expanse of Salt Lake City, Utah, in 2017, life unfolded with a rhythm of faith and community where trust was a cornerstone and dreams of prosperity burned bright. Amid the city's orderly streets and mountain vistas, Tom Henderson stood as a beacon of promise, a self-styled financial guru whose warm smile and earnest pitches drew in those yearning for a better future. But beneath his polished exterior lay a predator, spinning a web of lies that would shatter lives and expose the fragility of trust. This is the story of Tom Henderson's calculated fraud, a Ponzi scheme that preyed on the hopeful, a betrayal that left the community reeling, and the quiet resilience of those who fought back. Settle in, let the rain outside hum its mournful lullaby, and step with us into a world where greed wore a friendly face and the cost was everything. Tom Henderson wasn't born to deceit, or so it seemed. Raised in a devout Mormon family in Provo, Utah in the 1970s, his childhood was steeped in faith and discipline. His parents, a school teacher and a carpenter, instilled values of hard work and charity. But young Tom was restless, his eyes fixed on the wealth he saw in magazines and TV shows. He was bright, a quick talker who excelled at debate, charming classmates and teachers alike, but there was a shadow to his charm, an impatience, a hunger for shortcuts that set him apart from his peers. By high school, he was selling overpriced candy bars for fundraisers that benefited only himself, a small rebellion against the modesty of his upbringing. College was a proving ground. At Brigham Young University, Tom studied finance, drawn to the promise of wealth more than the mechanics of numbers. He was a social chameleon, blending into study groups and church circles, always pitching small ventures, car washes, t-shirt sales that rarely delivered as promised. These were tests, honing his ability to persuade, to make people believe in his vision. After graduating in 1998, he drifted through jobs, insurance sales, real estate, never staying long, always chasing the next big score. By 2005, he settled in Salt Lake City, a place where faith and ambition intertwined, and Tom saw opportunity in its trusting heart. Salt Lake was Tom's stage. The city's close-knit community, rooted in shared values, was fertile ground for his talents. He founded Henderson Financial Solutions in 2010, a firm that promised to guide clients to financial security through exclusive investment opportunities. The setup was modest but convincing. A small office downtown, a website filled with testimonials, a staff of 2 assistants who believed in Tom's mission. His pitch was tailored to his audience: middle-class families, retirees, small business owners, people who dreamed of college funds, secure retirements, or a nest egg for their kids. Tom leaned on his Mormon roots, attending church events, quoting scripture, presenting himself as a man of integrity who shared their values. His early clients were neighbors, church members, people who trusted his handshake and earnest demeanor. Tom delivered small returns, enough to build credibility, using their money to pay out while drawing in more. By 2014, Henderson Financial was thriving with dozens of clients, investing thousands, then tens of thousands. Tom's pitch evolved. He offered stakes in private equity funds, promising 15-20% annual returns through ventures like real estate developments and tech startups. The details were vague, proprietary strategies, he'd say, but his confidence was infectious. Clients like Angela Stevens, a single mother who'd saved $115,000, 0 cents for her daughter's future, saw Tom as a godsend, a way to secure their dreams. But Henderson Financial was a lie, a Ponzi scheme built on smoke and mirrors. Tom had no real investments, no startups, no properties, just a cycle of new money paying old returns. He funneled client funds into personal accounts, spending lavishly on a new house in the suburbs, a boat, private school tuition for his 3 kids. To keep the illusion alive, he produced fake financial statements, forged broker reports, even hired an accountant, unaware of the fraud, to lend legitimacy. His lifestyle was careful, not too flashy, just prosperous enough to signal success. To his clients, he was a family man who'd cracked the code to wealth, a model of the American dream. The scheme's scale grew, but so did its fragility. By 2017, Tom had taken in over $10 million, 0 cents from nearly 80 clients, his network spanning Utah and neighboring states. The pressure to pay returns was relentless, and new investments were slowing. Some clients, wary of delays, started asking questions. Tom deflected with charm, hosting dinners where he reassured investors with tales of upcoming deals. But behind the scenes, he was scrambling, borrowing from one account to pay another, his nights plagued by the math of a collapsing empire. He knew the end was near, but his ego wouldn't let him stop. The cracks became impossible to hide. Angela Stevens, one of Tom's biggest clients, grew suspicious when her quarterly report showed inconsistencies, returns listed, but no clear source. She pressed Tom for details, and his vague responses, market volatility, delayed payouts, didn't satisfy her. Angela, a paralegal with a sharp mind, started digging, contacting other investors, finding similar stories. She uncovered a pattern. Older clients paid, newer ones stalled. Her discovery was a spark, igniting a chain of doubt that would unravel Tom's world. Unbeknownst to Tom, the FBI was already watching. In late 2016, a bank flagged suspicious transfers from Henderson Financial's accounts, large sums moving to personal accounts with no clear purpose. Agent Karen Walsh, a financial crimes expert, took the case, her instincts honed by years of chasing fraudsters. She saw Tom's operation as a classic Ponzi, its simplicity masked by his community ties. Walsh's team traced the money, finding offshore accounts and shell companies, but needed insider testimony to seal the case. Angela's complaints, filed with the SEC, were the break they needed, pointing them to other victims and Tom's paper trail. Tom sensed the noose tightening. Investors were pulling out, demanding refunds he couldn't provide. He started liquidating assets, selling the boat, draining accounts, planning to flee to Canada, where he'd stashed money under an alias. He was days from vanishing when a former employee, Jenna, turned on him. Jenna, a receptionist who'd grown uneasy with Tom's secrecy, had overheard him discussing offshore transfers. She copied emails, financial logs, and handed them to Walsh's team, fearing for her own liability. Her betrayal, born of conscience, was the final nail. The FBI moved in June 2017, raiding Tom's office and home. Agents found laptops, fake documents, a ledger detailing every client's investment. Tom was arrested at his house, his wife and kids watching in shock as he was cuffed. At the station, he was defiant, claiming it was a misunderstanding, but the evidence was overwhelming. Walsh's team had unraveled his network. Bank records, Jenna's files, Angela's testimony. Tom's world collapsed, his charm useless against the weight of his lies. The trial in 2018 was a reckoning for Salt Lake City. Tom faced charges of wire fraud, money laundering, and securities fraud, with losses totaling $12 million, 0 cents. The courtroom was filled with victims: Angela, who'd lost her daughter's college fund, retirees who'd sold homes to invest, families whose trust in their community was shattered. Their testimonies were raw, filled with grief and anger. Angela spoke of the betrayal, her voice steady but heavy. He looked us in the eyes and lied, knowing what it would cost us. Tom's defense argued he was a man chasing success, caught in a spiral he couldn't escape. But the jury saw a predator who'd exploited faith for gain. Tom took the stand, a rare misstep. His attempt at remorse felt rehearsed, his apologies hollow. He spoke of his family, his church, but the jury saw through it, a man sorry only for being caught. The judge, a stern figure with no patience for crocodile tears, called his scheme a deliberate theft of trust. In a city where community was sacred, Tom's betrayal cut deep. He was sentenced to 15 years, a term that sent ripples through Utah, a warning to others who might prey on the faithful. In the aftermath was a wound that didn't heal. Victims like Angela formed support groups, pooling resources to recover what little they could. Most of Tom's money was gone, spent on his lifestyle, hidden beyond reach. Angela became an advocate, speaking at churches and community centers, warning of the signs of fraud. Her daughter's college fund was lost, but Angela's strength grew, her resolve a shield against despair. Other victims struggled. Some lost homes, others their faith in the community that had failed to see Tom's truth. Salt Lake City grappled with its own reckoning. The Mormon community, tight-knit and trusting, faced questions of how one of their own could betray them so thoroughly. Tom's church excommunicated him, a rare act that underscored the depth of his sin. Family, wife, and children moved away, their lives upended by his shame. The city tightened oversight of financial advisors, but the lesson was clear. Trust, once a strength, could be a vulnerability. In prison, Tom was a shadow of his former self. Stripped of his stage, he faded into the system, teaching basic math to inmates, his charisma dulled by bars. Some say he's found faith again, seeking redemption through scripture. Others believe he's merely playing a role, waiting for release. His name became a cautionary tale, whispered in financial seminars, a reminder that even the most trusted can deceive. The victims, though, were the story's soul, Angela, and others turned pain into purpose, educating their community, rebuilding trust one small act at a time. They didn't recover their money, but they reclaimed their dignity, their resilience, a defiance of Tom's greed. Their fight wasn't just for justice, but for the values he betrayed. Community, faith, the belief that hope could endure even the darkest betrayals. As the rain falls outside, let Tom Henderson's story linger like a chill in your heart. It's a tale of deception, loss, and the quiet strength of those who rise from ruin. But the shadows are not yet sated. 2 stories remain, each a plunge into the choices that define us or destroy us. Stay with Shadows of the Past, if you dare, for what lies ahead. Part 10, The Illusion of Billy McFarland. In the sun-drenched promise of the Bahamas in 2017, where turquoise waters and white sands whispered of paradise, a dream was sold to thousands. A music festival that promised luxury, exclusivity, and memories to last a lifetime. At the heart of this vision stood Billy McFarland, a young entrepreneur whose boundless ambition and infectious charisma turned a fantasy into a global phenomenon. But beneath the glossy Instagram posts and celebrity endorsements lay a house of lies, a fraudulent scheme that would strand hundreds in chaos and expose the dangers of unchecked hype. This is the story of the Fyre Festival, a tale of deception, delusion, and the wreckage left when dreams are built on sand. Settle in, let the rain outside weave its mournful cadence, and step with us into a world where ambition burned too bright and the fallout was catastrophic. Billy McFarland wasn't born to the elite circles he later infiltrate. Raised in a middle-class suburb of New Jersey in the 1990s, his childhood was unremarkable, marked by a restless energy and a knack for persuasion. His parents, real estate developers, encouraged his entrepreneurial spirit, but young Billy was more dreamer than doer, his ideas outpacing his ability to execute. By high school, he was dabbling in small ventures, selling custom t-shirts, organizing local events, each a test of his ability to sell a vision. He was charming, a fast talker who could make the improbable seem certain, his confidence a magnet for those around him. College was a brief detour. At Bucknell University, Billy studied computer engineering but spent more time pitching startups than attending classes. He dropped out after a year, convinced he could outsmart the system. In 2013, at 21, he founded Magnacies, a luxury credit card aimed at millennials, promising exclusive perks like VIP event access and discounts. The card was more style than substance. Its elite benefits often failed to materialize. But Billy's charisma sold it, drawing thousands of young professionals eager for status. Magnacies was a stepping stone, proof he could turn hype into cash, even if the results were shaky. By 2016, Billy's ambitions had outgrown Magnacies. He wanted something bigger, a venture that would cement his name among the world's elite. The idea for Fyre Festival came from a chance meeting with rapper Ja Rule, a fading star eager for a comeback. Over drinks, they dreamed up a music festival that would rival Coachella, but with a twist. A luxury experience on a private Bahamian island, blending music, art, and exclusivity. It would be Woodstock for the Instagram age, a playground for the wealthy and influential. Billy saw it as his ticket to greatness, a chance to outshine the skeptics who doubted his earlier ventures. The pitch was dazzling. Fyre Festival was marketed as a 2-weekend event in April 2017, set on Great Exuma, a pristine island once owned by Pablo Escobar. The lineup boasted A-list acts, Blink-182, Major Lazer, Migos, paired with gourmet dining, luxury villas, and yacht parties. Billy leveraged social media, hiring influencers like Kendall Jenner and Bella Hadid to post cryptic orange tiles with Pablo Escobar. Fyre Festival sparking a frenzy. A promotional video shot on Bahamian beaches with models and celebrities promised an unparalleled experience. Tickets ranged from $500 0 cents to $250,000 0 cents for VIP packages. selling out within hours. Investors poured in millions, drawn by Billy's vision and Ja Rule's star power. But Fyre Festival was a lie from the start. Billy had no experience organizing events of this scale, and the logistics were a fantasy. Great Exuma lacked the infrastructure for thousands of attendees. No villas, no gourmet kitchens, just a small airport and limited hotels. The private island was a gravel lot near a sandals resort, far from the untouched paradise promised. Billy ignored warnings from his team, a mix of overworked staff and inexperienced contractors who begged for more time and money. He pushed forward, driven by ego and the need to keep the hype alive, even as deadlines loomed and funds dwindled. The budget was a disaster. Billy raised over $25 million, 0 cents from investors, including $7 million, 0 cents from a single financier, but spent recklessly $250,000, 0 cents on influencer posts, millions on promotional events, and his own lavish lifestyle. He leased private jets, rented Manhattan lofts, and threw parties to keep investors dazzled, while the festival's infrastructure crumbled. Tents meant for disaster relief were ordered instead of villas. Catering was reduced to basic meals. Sanitation and medical facilities were afterthoughts. Staff pleaded for cancellation, but Billy refused, convinced he could hustle his way through, his optimism bordering on delusion. By early 2017, cracks were visible. Influencers posted vague updates, but locals in Exuma, unpaid for their work, began leaking photos of the site: soggy mattresses, half-built stages, porta potties in disarray. Social media buzz turned skeptical, but Billy doubled down, assuring ticket holders that logistical challenges were being resolved. He misled investors, forging documents to show fake bookings and inflated revenues, securing last-minute loans to keep the illusion afloat. Ja Rule, less involved but complicit, echoed Billy's assurances, unaware of the full extent of the chaos. The festival's first week in April 28, 2017 was a catastrophe. Hundreds of attendees, mostly young professionals who'd paid thousands, arrived to find a muddy field with FEMA tents, no security, and cheese sandwiches instead of gourmet meals. The promised artist never showed. Bands pulled out weeks earlier, unpaid and skeptical. Water was scarce, luggage was dumped in piles, and stranded attendees, many influencers among them, live tweeted their nightmare. Their social media erupted. Fyre fraud trending as videos of the chaos went viral. By nightfall, attendees were scrambling for flights home, some sleeping on the tarmac, their dream vacation a dystopian order. Billy watched the collapse from New York, his phone flooded with furious messages. He'd stayed behind, claiming to oversee operations, but was likely avoiding the fallout. As the disaster unfolded, he vanished, leaving his team to face the wrath of attendees and media. Local Bahamian workers, owed hundreds of thousands, were abandoned, their livelihoods gutted. Investors, realizing they'd been duped, demanded answers, but Billy's accounts were empty, the money spent or hidden. The festival's second weekend was canceled, the dream officially dead. The FBI was quick to act. By May 2017, agents were investigating, tipped off by investor complaints and the viral debacle. Agent Rachel Wenyan, a fraud specialist, led the case, her team uncovering a trail of forged documents, wire transfers, and unpaid contracts. Billy's scheme was brazen but sloppy. Fake financials emailed to investors, burner accounts for shady deals. Wenyan's team interviewed staff, many of whom turned on Billy, revealing his reckless spending and lies. The Bahamian government, furious at the damage to their tourism reputation, cooperated, providing records of unpaid vendors and local losses. Billy didn't run, at least not at first. He returned to New York, attempting to spin the narrative, claiming unforeseen challenges and promising refunds. But the pressure was crushing. Investors filed lawsuits, attendees demanded compensation, and the media hounded him. In a desperate move, he launched a new scam, selling fake tickets to events like the Met Gala, defrauding victims of another $100,000, 0 cents. It was a fatal misstep. Ewing's team caught him in a sting, arresting him in June 2017 at his Manhattan apartment. He was charged with wire fraud, facing up to 20 years. The trial in 2018 was a media circus. Fyre Festival, a cultural touchstone for millennial excess and social media deception. Prosecutors laid out Billy's fraud, $26 million, 0 cents raised, most squandered with forged documents and lies to sustain it. Witnesses included investors, staff, and Bahamian workers like Marianne Roll, a caterer who lost her life savings preparing meals for attendees. Her testimony, tearful but dignified, struck a chord, highlighting the human cost of Billy's ambition. Ja Rule, not charged, testified minimally, distancing himself though his reputation took a hit. Billy's defense was weak. His lawyers argued he was an overzealous dreamer, not a criminal, caught in a spiral of bad decisions. Billy took the stand, his charm diminished, his apologies half-hearted. "I believed we could pull it off," he said, but the jury saw a man who'd chosen greed over accountability. The judge, unmoved, called fire a deliberate betrayal of trust. In October 2018, Billy was sentenced to 6 years, a relatively light term due to his lack of prior convictions, but his debts, $26 million, 0 cents in restitution, ensured a lifetime of consequence. The aftermath was a reckoning. Attendees, many wealthy, recovered financially but carried the embarrassment. Their fire experience a cautionary tale of buying into hype. Bahamian workers like Marianne faced deeper losses. Crowdfunding campaigns raised funds for some, but the scars remained. Investors out millions pursued lawsuits, recovering little. The festival's failure sparked documentaries. Netflix and Hulu released competing films in 2019 that dissected Billy's fraud, cementing fire as a symbol of social media's dark side. Billy, in prison, was a faded star. He taught entrepreneurship classes. His irony lost on no one, and was released early in 2022 for good behavior. He attempted to come back, pitching new ventures, but public skepticism and his restitution debts hobbled him. Some see him as repentant, others as a con man biding time. His name is a warning, etched in the annals of pop culture, a reminder that charisma can mask chaos. The real heroes were the victims who rebuilt. Marianne Roll opened a new restaurant, her resilience a beacon for Exuma's community. Attendees like influencer Alyssa Lynch, who documented the chaos, used their platforms to advocate for transparency in marketing. Their stories turned fire's failure into a lesson. Trust must be earned, not bought. The Bahamas tightened event regulations and the influencer economy faced scrutiny, but the allure of the perfect experience persists, a siren call for new dreamers. As the rain falls outside, let Billy McFarland's story settle like dust in your mind. It's a tale of illusion, betrayal, and the fragile line between ambition and deceit. But the shadows are not yet done. One final story waits, a plunge into the choices that break us or bind us. Stay with Shadows of the Past if you dare, for what lies ahead. Part 11, The Redemption of Ryan Mitchell. In the sprawling suburbs of Denver, Colorado, in 2015, life moved with the quiet cadence of routine. Families, careers, and dreams woven into the fabric of a growing city. Among them, Ryan Mitchell was a man who seemed to have it all. A loving wife, a thriving career, and a reputation as a pillar of his community. But beneath the polished surface, Ryan was unraveling. His life consumed by an addiction that would lead to a desperate act of violence. This is the story of Ryan's fall, a bank robbery born of desperation, a family's unwavering love, and a hard-fought journey to redemption that would redefine his legacy. Settle in, let the rain outside hum its somber lullaby, and step with us into a world where one choice can shatter everything and another can rebuild it. Ryan Mitchell was born in 1980 in a working-class Denver neighborhood, the youngest of 3 boys, raised by a mechanic father and a librarian mother. His childhood was warm but disciplined, filled with backyard games and church Sundays. Ryan was the quiet one, thoughtful and kind, with a knack for fixing things, bikes, radios, anything broken. School was steady. He wasn't a star, but earned solid grades, his teachers noting his empathy and work ethic. After high school, he studied accounting at a local college, drawn to its stability, and graduated in 2002 with a plan to build a secure life. In 2005, Ryan married Lauren, a graphic designer whose laughter lit up his world. They settled in a modest Denver suburb, welcoming a daughter, Emma, in 2008, and a son, Noah, in 2010. Ryan landed a job at a mid-sized accounting firm, his diligence earning promotions and respect. To neighbors, the Mitchells were the ideal family, active in their church, hosting barbecues, always ready to lend a hand. Ryan coached Emma's soccer team, his gentle encouragement a hallmark of his fatherhood. But beneath this idyllic life, a shadow was growing, one that Ryan hid even from himself. It started with painkillers. In 2012, a car accident left Ryan with a fractured back, the pain relentless. Doctors prescribed oxycodone, and at first it was a lifeline, dulling the ache enough for him to work and play with his kids. But the relief came with a cost. Ryan found the pills dulled not just his pain, but his stress, The long hours, the mortgage, the pressure to provide. When his prescription ran out, he sought more, first from doctors, then from shadier sources. By 2014, he was addicted, spending hundreds a week on pills, his savings draining. Lauren noticed his distance, late nights, irritability, but attributed it to work. Ryan, ashamed, kept his secret, believing he could quit on his own. Addiction spiraled. Ryan started skimming from client accounts at work, small amounts he justified as borrowing to cover his habit. His firm didn't notice, but the guilt gnawed at him. By early 2015, he was out of control, his days a blur of pills and panic. He'd lost weight, his once steady hands trembling. Lauren confronted him, sensing something deeper than stress, but Ryan deflected, his lies a wall between them. He was stealing thousands now, his job hanging by a thread, his family's future at risk. Desperate, he saw only one way out, a reckless plan born of a mind clouded by addiction. The idea was a bank robbery, a quick score to pay off debts, and buy time to get clean. Ryan had no criminal history, no experience with violence, but desperation warped his judgment. He'd overheard a coworker mention a small bank branch in Aurora, its security lax, its vault holding enough cash to solve his problems. Ryan planned it alone, his accounting mind mapping every detail. A Friday afternoon, just before closing, when the bank was quiet, he bought a cheap handgun from a street dealer, his hands shaking as he tested its weight. The night before, he sat in his garage, staring at Emma and Noah's bikes, tears streaming. He told himself it was for them, a lie he almost believed. No. The robbery was a disaster. On March 20, 2015, a humid afternoon, Ryan walked into the bank wearing a ski mask, his gun trembling in his hand. The lobby had two tellers and a manager, all caught off guard. "Nobody move!" he shouted, his voice cracking. The tellers froze, hands raised, but the manager, a woman named Claire, hesitated, reaching for an alarm. Ryan panicked, firing a shot into the ceiling, the sound deafening. Plaster rained down, and the tellers screamed. Ryan, heart pounding, demanded cash, his plan unraveling. Claire, calm under pressure, handed over $30,000, 0 cents from the vault, her eyes locked on his, seeing fear behind the mask. The alarm Claire triggered was silent, but Ryan didn't know. He stuffed the cash into a backpack, backing toward the door, his gun waving. Outside, sirens were already converging. Ryan sprinted to his car, parked a block away, but his mask slipped, exposing his face to a security camera. He drove erratically, the cash spilling across the passenger seat, his mind racing. Police spotted him within minutes, a chase erupting through Aurora's streets. While Ryan, no criminal mastermind, swerved into a dead-end alley, his car stalling. Officers surrounded him, guns drawn. He dropped the weapon, hands raised, his world collapsing as he whispered, "I'm sorry." The arrest was a shock to Denver. Ryan Mitchell, the quiet accountant, the soccer dad, was now a bank robber, his face plastered on local news. Lauren was devastated, her trust shattered as police searched their home, finding pills and stolen client funds. Emma and Noah, too young to understand, clung to their mother, their safe world gone. Ryan's parents visited him in jail, their grief tempered by disbelief. "This isn't you," his mother said, but Ryan couldn't meet her eyes. The charges were severe: armed robbery, reckless endangerment, embezzlement from his firm with a potential sentence of decades. Lauren's pain was raw. She faced whispers from neighbors, questions from her children, and the reality of Ryan's addiction. She visited him once, her voice steady but broken. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. Ryan had no answer, only tears. Lauren didn't abandon him, but she set boundaries, focusing on Emma and Noah, determined to shield them from the fallout. She started therapy, joining a support group for families of addicts, her strength a lifeline for her kids. Ryan's betrayal cut deep, but her love, though bruised, held firm, a flicker of hope for a future they might reclaim. The trial in 2016 was a quiet affair, the media frenzy fading as Denver moved on. Ryan pleaded guilty, sparing his family a public spectacle. Prosecutors detailed his crimes: the robbery, $50,000 0 cents stolen from clients, a trail of forged documents. Claire, the bank manager, testified, her voice calm but firm, describing the terror of that afternoon. Ryan's lawyer argued his addiction drove him to desperation, not malice. Presenting letters from his family and pastor attesting to his character, Ryan spoke, his voice low, owning his actions. "I broke their trust," he said of Lauren and his kids. "I'll spend my life making it right." The judge, moved by his remorse but bound by the law, sentenced him to 12 years with parole possible in 7. Prison was a crucible. The Colorado facility was a gray maze of concrete and despair, its inmates a mix of hardened criminals and broken men like Ryan. He was an outsider, his soft demeanor a target, but he kept his head down, avoiding trouble. His faith, dormant in recent years, became a refuge. He attended chapel, finding solace in prayer, and joined an addiction recovery group, confronting the demon that had led him here. The group was raw, men sharing stories of ruin, their honesty a mirror for Ryan's guilt. Admitting his addiction was a first step, painful but freeing. Lauren's letters kept him alive. She wrote monthly, updating him on Emma and Noah, her words a mix of love and resolve. "We're okay," she'd say, "but you need to be the man they deserve." Ryan clung to her strength, writing back with apologies and promises, each letter a vow to change. He enrolled in every program available. GED tutoring, vocational training in carpentry, a parenting course to stay connected to his kids. He excelled, his sincerity earning respect from guards and counselors. A prison chaplain, Father Ruiz, saw his potential, mentoring him through reflections on accountability and redemption. Outside, Lauren rebuilt. She took a second job, moved to a smaller house, and leaned on her support group, her resilience a beacon for Emma and Noah. The kids struggled, Emma angry, Noah quiet, but Lauren's love held them together. She didn't hide Ryan's mistakes, explaining his addiction in age-appropriate ways, fostering hope without false promises. She sent photos to Ryan, milestones of their lives, Emma's soccer games, Noah's art projects, a reminder of what he was fighting for. Her faith in his change, cautious but real, was a bridge to a future they might share. By 2020, Ryan's transformation was undeniable. His counselor and Father Ruiz wrote glowing reports, and a prison reform group took notice, petitioning for early parole. Lauren's input was critical. She attended the hearing, her testimony a balance of pain and hope. "He's not the man who walked into that bank," she said, "but he has to prove it every day." The board, moved by Ryan's record, no infractions, a stack of certificates, and a clear plan for recovery, granted parole after 6 years. Ryan walked free in 2021, a man remade but humbled, knowing the hardest work lay ahead. Denver was a challenge. Ryan moved into a halfway house, his record a barrier to accounting jobs. He found work as a carpenter's apprentice, his prison training a lifeline. Lauren welcomed him cautiously, allowing supervised visits with Emma and Noah. The kids were shy at first, their trust fragile, but Ryan was patient, showing up for every soccer game, every school event, his presence a quiet promise. He attended AA meetings, stayed sober, and continued therapy, his recovery a daily choice. Lauren watched, her heart softening as Ryan proved himself not with words but with actions. Ryan didn't seek forgiveness from Claire, respecting her need for distance, but he donated to a victims fund, a small amends. He spoke at addiction recovery groups, sharing his story, bank robbery, prison, redemption, with raw honesty. His words resonated, helping others see a path out of their own darkness. Lauren, now a leader in her support group, joined him occasionally, their shared journey a testament to love's endurance. Emma and Noah, growing into teenagers, began to see their father not as a criminal but as a man fighting to be better. Denver moved on, but Ryan's crime left echoes. The bank tightened security, Claire retired, and the community grappled with addiction's toll, spurred by Lauren's advocacy. Ryan's story became a quiet legend in recovery circles, proof that even the deepest fall could lead to redemption. He and Lauren never fully reconciled as a couple, but they co-parented with respect. Their bond rooted in their children's future. Ryan lived simply, his carpentry work steady, his purpose clear, to be the father his kids deserved, the man Lauren had once believed in. As the rain falls outside, let Ryan Mitchell's story settle like a balm on your soul. It's a tale of desperation, consequence, and the fragile beauty of second chances. The shadows of his choices linger, but so does his redemption, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, there's a path back to the light. And so the shadows recede, leaving us with 11 stories of human frailty, tales of greed, rage, and desperation, but also of resilience, redemption, and the enduring fight for truth. From the glittering scams of Los Angeles to the quiet pain of Denver suburbs, these lives remind us that every choice casts a shadow, some longer than others. As the rain continues its gentle fall, let these stories linger, a whisper of caution and hope in the stillness of the night. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the past. Until next time, sleep well if you can, and beware the shadows that wait in the dark. This is Shadows of the Past, signing off.